Hello everybody and welcome back for another video. Today I'm gonna, in lieu of doing a podcast, gonna play the Daily Rapid. I'll probably just have time here to play one game and I'll see how I do. Hopefully, let's see. Alright, we're at the beginning. I'll click here, so hopefully I can get a player that's equal to my strength, and let's just jump into it. Okay, so hopefully this will give me some more time to just kind of get into if I can come up with a strategy and also play better, than 3-minute games, and also describe what I'm doing better if I manage to win. We'll see how it goes. Either way, I'm going to post this game, and hopefully it'll be educational. Obviously, when Rapids being played, you have to wait a little longer for a game because they take longer. I didn't think of that, but hopefully more people will join and I can get a game here. Alright, pretty good. Alright, 1800. Just jumping right in. So I'm going to play the Ruy Lopez. I like bishop to b5. And I like to just play solidly here. I can just bring the queen out. Other moves work, of course, something like d3. Alright. I want to prevent knight to d4. And also just prepare to play d4, which looks like I can do that here. Although I'm going to castle first. Alright. I'm going to play d3 so I can start getting my queenside pieces out. He has a pin there. I have a pin here. I like to bring the bishop back instead of here because it's not very active, and also if he takes, I get control of this very important f4 square. Alright, let's see. So this bishop's okay here. If he tries to chase it back, I can just simply bring it back, rerouting it here, which I knew I'd do that. Let's see here. I'm going to bring it back here because if I bring it here, then he can hit it with the knight, and then I'll have to give that bishop up. Bringing it back here gives me the option to bring it back to c2 instead of to b3 if he attacks it with the knight. Alright, so hopefully that makes sense. So we both managed to develop pretty well. Alright, now he took. I'm going to take with the pawn. Gives me the open f file as well as controlling these very important center squares. So he has this kind of annoying bishop here, and I got to figure out what to do about that. Let's see. All right, what is his? You have to ask his plan too. So he's gonna plan to bring. All right, let me bring this down here so I can see my time. There we go. All right, I'm gonna play rook to f2. That way I can either bring the knight in and bring it to g3. Alright, so he's hitting there. Probably going to bring this pawn up. Doesn't really do much yet. If I were him, I would go for something like a push here. Alright, so let's see. Now I'm threatening to bring the knight in, and I can play... Okay, well, that works too. Alright. Now I'm going to play queen here, hitting this pawn as well as threatening rook takes with a pin. Alright, so a rather dynamic game. Now, I'm going to kind of threaten him here. If he tries to take with this pawn, then I can actually take this knight. So, although he could threaten it with there, but let's see what happens here. So he could win. Let's see. So now my queen is threatened. What do I want to do? That would still give me a big advantage, I think. No, I think that just trades. All right, let's see. This will be interesting. All right, so I can bring this back down. Now I'm threatening there. Let's see what happens here. I could have took this pawn. So a little tactically inaccurate. Dropping, I think, two pieces for a rook, but I do have some pawn compensation, definitely. It's quite a complicated position, actually. All right, so now I'm going to take this here, win some more pawns, hitting this pawn as well. I mean, if I can scoop up some pawns, then I'll definitely have an advantage. I mean, a piece for a rook with a bunch of pawns down, especially if I get this 3-pawn majority, he's going to have some trouble, man. I'll tell you that. Let's see. You know what? I'm just going to take this and let's see if he wants to trade. What do I want to do here? I mean, I might just trade. Very interesting position, actually. So I would say it's roughly equal, but actually with this bishop and these pawns over here, I would say I have a definite advantage. All right. So I basically gave up another pawn. Wasn't the best idea there. Okay. Let's see. I mean, if I can get my king over and start pushing pawns, cause some trouble. I'll say that. Maybe I'll just start pushing pawns. Did he just drop a pawn? I'm pretty sure he just dropped a pawn. So again, dynamic, a lot of mistakes in this game, I'm sure, but all right. So as you can see, I'm not really having some overarching strategy necessarily. I would say it's more, all right, so I want to be sure I can, let's see. He can take. So I gotta be careful here. All right, so I'm gonna lose this pawn, but I want to make the right strategy here. Okay, so I can push this pawn, but if he takes, it's going to be a check. So that doesn't work. And once I move him out of the way, though, that could definitely be a problem. Let's see. The good thing is the bishop's covering this. If he takes that pawn, then I can hit here. All right, let's see. What do I want to do? I guess I can hit him there. The good thing is this light square bishop is covering the important queening square. So if he wastes a lot of time, actually my pawns are pretty well secured. He might go rook here. He has some real problems, I would say. Now if he moves the rook anywhere off the A file, I just push the pawn, and then he has to swing his rook back. And once I get my king to B6, I can push the pawn freely, although he'll check me, but I can bring my king over here. So it looks like earlier I made a mistake with the tactics. All right, so this is going to be brutal for him. Actually, I'd like to get a better strategy would have been to bring the bishop in because he's going to take it, but I'll have an extra piece and I can just slow win at that point. All right, so now I can push. He'll take. Actually, I wish I could have found a way. Let's see here. Well, I'll interpose with the bishop. My preference would have been to get the bishop in and then get a queen, but now I'm going to have to just trade his rook for a pawn. Well, okay. I'll just keep it simple. We're getting low on time, although this should be an easy win. Okay. Now, once I bring in this bishop, if he brings a king up, okay, that's fine. Hopefully I'll be able to win with one pawn. What I don't want to do is trade pawns. And now I can come in here, hopefully. so let's see. What I don't want to do is trade pawns, basically. Okay, give me a second to calculate here. All right, so I can take and check, but then his king gets closer to my pawn, so I don't want to do that. I'll basically just push this pawn, and then let's see what happens. If he pushes the pawn here, then I can take with the bishop. All right, so I can take with the bishop, and then I have control of all the light squares. I'll win this pawn here. And there's really nothing he can do at this point. All the pawns are going to fall. Maybe we'll trade one. Actually, not at this point, because this light square bishop covers all the important squares. All right, this is actually a pretty educational game. I made a lot of mistakes. All right, let's see. Let's see here. So what do I want to do? I think after here, and then here, I win the pawn. Because I have, yeah, okay. So he resigned. All right, so pretty messy game. Let's go to the analysis board here. Actually quite interesting though, because we went from some tactical mistakes to him dropping pawns here. That's quite educational. All right, so let's see what happened. Turn the engine on here. All right, so we got this kind of non-standard line, bringing the queen out, but also with bishop to c5. Now this is my favorite line as black in the Ruy Lopez, for the simple fact that it's very simple and aggressive. So I would recommend you play this if you're playing on the black side. Just because you get the bishop out, you develop, you have very active pieces and a lot of attacking chances for much less risk than like the Marshall variation where you have to sacrifice material. All right, so I play c3, standard idea, just controlling the center as well as preparing something like d3 and then the queen side. Now, white's main strategic problem in the Ruy Lopez in normal games is the queen side development. So you got to be aware of that, and also I'd recommend to sometimes play h3 to prevent this pin to reduce black's attacking chances. All right, so castle, let's see. So it's already rating black, I'd say about equal, so minus 0.1. It's not really significant. All right, so it's saying I should have played h3, which I did. Also could have took this knight. I prefer to play h3 and just maintain the tension. Now it's saying rook to e1. I don't know about that. Just another strategy, I guess. Not much of a difference, developing my piece. Now, these kind of moves make more logical sense to me, developing your minor pieces. All right, so it's actually saying bishop to h4 is the recommendation, and I guess logically, so this is exactly how you want to analyze. So I was saying in my own analysis that I like to bring the bishop back, so that makes sense too. We'll see the evaluation change. This is how you can objectively improve your analysis. Okay, so if the bishop goes back, you want to try to think in your mind why that makes logical sense. Of course, it makes logical sense because it maintains the pin on the knight, and it also keeps a piece over on the king side. But something like g5, I really didn't want to give black this initiative. And okay, a computer can play this and say it's equal, but just a human really doesn't like giving his opponent those kind of chances. And I don't have this kind of sack because the bishop's pinned, so I didn't want to go for that line. So you really need to analyze these kind of things that you prefer and what you like when you're playing in order to improve your chess. Because if you go for what the computer says as objective truth for you, then you're going to have problems. Because you get in positions that you don't really understand or feel comfortable with. All right, so I brought the bishop back. It's saying minus 0.4. So there was a drop. Now, logically, this is how you want to think about analysis. You want to think that I brought a piece back, so it did reduce my activity. It made logical sense to me, though, because I wanted to stay in the center and also keep my bishop active to contest this bishop that was keeping a pin on f2. If he took, then I could take. But nevertheless, it's still accurate. So if black would have took, then it's saying that they would take with the queen. All right, I would have taken with the pawn because it makes more sense to me. And it's okay to make these slight inaccuracies as long as they make sense to you and they form kind of a cohesive strategy in your mind. But objectively, it's saying that queen takes would have been better. All right, so knight out. So we're roughly equal up to this point. What you really want to pay attention to is the big changes, and we'll see probably a tactical mistake that I made up here, and try to find the better move. All right, so we're getting some maneuvering here. He wants to bring the knight in and move those queenside pawns. Now I play rook to f2. It's saying bishop to b3, which actually would make logical sense because it's a relatively inactive piece now, and you would get it in this diagonal with a pin and aiming towards the king side. So that makes logical sense to me as well. Rook to f2. Obviously, there's not much of a big drop, so now it's actually saying almost equal. So not a bad move. All right, bishop back. And now it's actually saying g4. So I could have played a little more aggressively in this position. Something like probably g4 and then knight and then to f4. So chase the bishop back. And then, yeah, knight to h4. So that would have been a better strategy that I missed. All right, so I brought the knight back. Now you can see a sudden decrease to almost minus 0.8. So let's analyze this here. All right, so I brought the knight back. This violates the idea of keeping your pieces active, but it had a strategy to bring the knight to g3, which you can see I didn't even do that, right? So I probably should have analyzed it a little deeper, and just from my own understanding, I violated that idea. And it's saying that g4 would have been better because, first off, it attacks and also reduces black's activity. So as I'm talking about activity, people say that seems like a beginner basic thing. Oh, I already knew that. Well, no, because when you try to apply it, it's actually quite hard, and this is a perfect example of where you get lost in the position, which I did temporarily here. All right, so I brought the knight back. He just took, which actually gave away one of his active pieces, and now it's equal. All right, so mistake for a mistake. All right, so actually he gave me an advantage if I would have just took, and I decided to make it more complicated for some reason. All right, so not a blunder. And now I kind of tried to trick him, but the rook wasn't the best move. I still could have just took. And let's see a line here. So I would have take. What I had to play. Let's say if he took here. I could have brought the knight out this way, it's saying. So just a long-term strategy of increasing piece activity by the computer's idea. All right, so there was a mistake, although he could have played c4 with this trumped up pawn center, so that would have been bad for me. Instead, he took. I took here, which was a relatively minor, I guess, tactical mistake after c4. And then I took. Okay, so it's actually not too badly rated after queen takes. All right, so there's my mistake. Rook took. Let's see. I thought that if after he took... Oh, okay, I see now. All right, so I missed this in my calculations. I thought if rook took, then he would just win all these pieces after I took here. But actually, after he takes the queen... Let's see. If he took here... I see. So rook takes f7. All right, so I missed these quite complicated capturing tactics. This is a very educational moment here. All right, so after he took, I just decided to move the queen back, but I could have kept going with rook takes, and now if pawn takes, I would have taken with check, and actually I would have ended up like this. So that would have been winning. I missed that after the pawn takes, I could take with check. I thought that it would be like this, but I didn't see that I could take. I thought that I would be down. But that was inaccurate. So actually I just brought the queen back. takes. All right, so let's just keep going. All right, so queen to d6. That would have been the best move, protecting the pawn. So really the mistake that he made, he could have had a winning advantage after these moves, where he consolidates all his pawns, and yeah, so he would have had a winning advantage at this point with his material, although I would say it's still quite difficult. But in the ensuing moves, after he brings the queen back, he drops a few pawns. All right, so he still could have played queen to b6, threatening this pawn, my own weak pawn. And then queen takes. He still could have played queen to b6. All right, so then after he drops some pawns, I still have a weakness on this pawn, and now I would say queen side's open, and black definitely has an advantage at this point. I thought he was going to bring the rook out or something, but he didn't do that. All right, check. All right, so there's another drop there. It's saying I should have brought my knight in. We'll see what happens. So queen to d3. So he should have played his queen in and started attacking me. Although, let's see what would happen here. So queen to f4. This is quite complicated. So basically, just if he maintained the tension, he could have won. Easier said than done, huh? Trade. All right, so because of that trade, that gave me a slight advantage. So I wasn't sure in these middle moves, I would say up until queen to d6, I wasn't sure what was going on, but actually after these trades here, I felt that I was pretty good in this position. I didn't see that I dropped a pawn until I played the move, but I dropped a pawn, and now it's saying he's actually, so the advantage goes back to black because of that pawn. He plays inaccurately, letting my king come in, very dangerous. And that's just not accurate. He should have brought his own king in. It's even suggesting king to f8. And now it's basically too late at this point. All right, well, actually, it looks... Sometimes these evaluations have a lag. Okay, so... It takes e4. All right, so I do drop another pawn. It was saying it's equal... if he would have brought his king in. So he would have been able to contest me by bringing his king in. So for him to work on endings for sure. All right, so let's see what happens here. All right, after I play a6, the advantage goes to me. I have the initiative. Okay, so basically from here on out, it's over. Once I get that trade, I have a piece up. All right. So we'll just go through these moves. Oh, it'll make sure I didn't make any mistakes in the ending. All right, looks okay. So a very kind of complicated game in those tactics, I would say. That was the most complicated part of the game. And you get that when you have a lot of pins and a lot of piece contact, especially in a 10-minute game. To sort through that can be, you're going to miss something sometimes. So. All right, so hopefully that wasn't too messy and ridiculous of a game. Felt it was pretty educational, going from all the stages to the end game and seeing how if you do get a material advantage, you got to watch dropping those pawns, because that can come back and bite you in an end game, even if you're up a rook versus a minor piece, especially a bishop. A bishop only controls one less square than a rook, which I talked about in my main course on this channel. And because of that, because the bishop only controls one less square than a rook, if I'm controlling the main queening square of the pawn, the light square, and that's the main diagonal, then actually the bishop can be even more powerful than a rook in that position if the rook has to stay on the A file like it did in this position. The rook can't even try to go and attack these pawns. All right, so hopefully you learned how to do more of the analysis that I was talking about. I thought that was a pretty good example of how you learn from these little analysis tweaks that you make in your thought process, like bringing the knight back, and just a bunch of other examples in this game. All right, so hopefully you enjoyed that. Sorry I didn't get a podcast out. I'll be back to it next week. Leave more questions because there weren't that many, and I couldn't really come up with something too compelling to talk about for at least more than 10 minutes. So get those in this week if you have anything you want to hear about, and I'll get to it next week. Have a good weekend, and I'll see you in the future. Bye. Thanks for watching Chess Diagnostic. I encourage you to subscribe and hit the bell so you receive all the notifications when I release a new video. If you want to support the channel, you can do so through PayPal, cryptocurrency, or you could check out the Chess Diagnostic apparel shop where I have all kinds of designs that I made myself for t-shirts, hoodies, and I'll add new designs weekly. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the future.
Everywhere that you want to.